YouTube wrestling fans, you've got the following contest. This is the March 24th edition of TNA Impact, and here's my review. To start things off, just letting everyone know, Jason is still on vacation. I'm not sure when he's going to be back. Maybe we could write him in later. But what we are going to talk about is TNA. TNA was somewhat interesting. Lots of stupid segments, which is to be expected, especially with Impact. Uh, I guess we'll start off with the opening of the show. We saw Ken Kennedy with supposedly his college professor, and they had like a one of those Goodwill Hunting equations, and they tried to figure out what happened and why it happened last week in the main event. It ended in Kennedy giving a mic check to his former teacher. Hogan and Bischoff came out. I thought it was kind of interesting because they pulled something like Hulk Hogan made wrestling and Eric Bischoff is a genius signs. Those might have been planted. Knowing Vince Russo, Hulk Hogan, and Eric Bischoff together, they just might have been. That whole shtick. We saw RVD come out, and Sting came out. They built up the main event, which we'll get into in just a few minutes. Mickie James and Victoria came out, or Tara. Decent match. I mean, for what it was, I was expecting just horrible, but actually it was not that bad. We saw Mickie James go over in a extremely high angle DDT. Madison Rayne came out afterward and was very upset, especially because she had told Victoria at any cost to destroy Mickie James. After the commercial break, we saw Elijah Burke, Hope, D'Angelo Dinero go into I guess it was a disqualification for Oketo's debut. Very similar to what we saw Sheamus do to Evan Bourne a few weeks ago. It was a very violent side of the Pope that we have not seen before. Also, he took off his boot and decided to beat him down with it. And of course, we saw Samoa Joe do a run-in. Interesting note, we actually saw Oketo get real color, busted lip, as a matter of fact. Just really stupid what they're doing with those guys. On to the more interesting stuff. We saw Ric Flair come out with, I guess they're an item now, Matt Hardy and Bubba Ray Dudley. Kind of cool to see those guys together just because of their history in tag team wrestling, and especially the things that they did in the WWF versus each other with the Hardy Boys and the Dudley Boys, and of course Edge and Christian in the mix with the ladder matches and the TLCs and whatnot. So it was kind of cool to see them together, but all in all, it just wasn't enough to say, wow, TNA is really bringing in whatever, the ratings, the money, the fans. They had challenged Fortune, us four versus you four. Fortune comes out, beats down Ric Flair and Bubba Ray Dudley and Matt Hardy, who had his Predator braids in this evening. And, everybody's just all out brawl. We did see Ric Flair beginning to strip. He did not get bloody. I was very surprised Ric Flair did not blade for this occasion. It looked like Fortune was just about to get the upper hand and Beer Money was doing their finisher. All of a sudden, the lights go out, everything starts glowing red. I knew immediately who it had to be. It is my absolute privilege to announce to the world. We have talked about it many times on the show, but Abyss has resurrected and is now back from the dead. He made his full return tonight when he single-handedly took out the members of Fortune with choke slams and the Black Hole Slam on Kazarian. Later on, we did see Abyss say something along the lines of Janus was in his vertebrae and this monster is stronger than ever. Good to see him come back from the dead. It's been a few weeks, maybe about 2 months, since we saw him, since the whole they thing. They are coming. Uh, on another note, we saw Hernandez debut Anakia, his new partner in the stable that he's building. Kind of like the evil LAX, if you could imagine that. It's called Mexican America, and I have no idea who his partner is. I promise you, he's gonna go nowhere. This stable is going nowhere. The most interesting part of the stable is they have the women's or the knockouts tag team belts with Sarita and Rosita. I really, I don't see where this is going. Uh, Devon Dudley comes out with Matt Morgan, and now they're together as a tag team fighting with Hernandez and Anakia. It was so bad. I mean, bad, bad, bad. But the worst thing about it was they pulled down an American flag and then they put a Mexican flag over it to show that now they're getting so much power. The only bad thing about this was I understand that's a great way to get a lot of heat, but the flag was so big you could not watch the wrestling. So whoever was the opposite side of that flag, behind that flag in the impact zone, could not watch the match because the flag was so big it completely blocked their vision of the ring. That was a bad idea. TNA should have been smarter and knew what they were doing before they put it there. They could have put that flag anywhere, but instead they didn't, I guess, check their P's and Q's, and they blocked the fans' vision. Bad, bad move, TNA. Another interesting thing that happened was we saw Velvet Sky come to try to get some revenge on Sarita and Rosita. Angelina Love came to her BFF's aid, and she kind of walked out like a zombie, and I was like, oh wow, gotta be, gotta be. Winter has to have some kind of spell on her. Sure enough, Winter came out, screamed, Angelina! We hear Mike Tenay or Taz say, she's got some kind of incredible power over her. So it is my belief that Angelina Love is now possessed by Winter. I'm going to guess it's a spell. One of the highlights of this evening was Crimson is back on TV, and he teamed up with Scott Steiner and they went over Ink Inc. I think Crimson's going to be a really, really good worker, but he just didn't have a lot to work with putting him in the match with someone like Jesse Neal. He's got a very unique look to him, and I think he's really, really going to be successful in the wrestling business. Maybe not in TNA, but in the wrestling business in general. I think Crimson is going to be one of the breakout guys this year if TNA can give him some TV time and put him in some decent matches. Maybe not in a big angle, but just let people see what he can do in the ring and let him work. But they did go over Ink Inc. The highlight of that match was, Scott Steiner getting the hot tag and, Crimson come in, clean house. Really cool move, too, on Crimson. Now, main event time, we saw what was to determine the number one contender at the pay-per-view for the heavyweight belt. We saw Rob Van Dam versus Ken Kennedy, with Sting working his way eventually to become the guest referee. Really horrible match. Still don't know what happened. Kennedy hit RVD with a mic check in the ring post, knocked him out completely. Then he kind of brawled out with Sting. He wanted him to count out RVD, but he wouldn't. During the struggle, the bell magically rang, which we'll get to in just a second. So there was technically, I think, no winner. But that being said, it is TNA, and Vince Russo is back there pulling his puppet strings. So next week, who knows who's going to be the number one contender. They said that Rob Van Dam won the match. Later on, after the commercial break, they interviewed Rob Van Dam, and Rob Van Dam now has amnesia. He has no idea that he had the match or that he won the match. He thinks next week is the big match. He has absolutely no recollection of what happened this evening. Also, what I can tell you is TNA did something that they normally don't do, and they actually worked up a story and they finished it, because we saw the end of Impact was Sting and Ken Kennedy actually arguing over who rang the bell, because they said that Sting didn't ring the bell. Sting said he didn't ring the bell. Kennedy is convinced Sting rang the bell. So I think next week we're gonna, I don't know what's gonna happen, honestly. Tune in, subscribe, leave comments. This is the following contest. We'll see you next week for Impact.